So I'm back with Bill Wolfer, who reached out to me because of a Billie Jean video that we made, and we reviewed, what Bill did, because Bill was responsible for making that sound and playing it on Billie Jean. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to let the world know about some of the other great music that Bill was involved in as a writer, co-writer, producer, co-producer, some really important stuff all around the same time. And we'll just go through them one at a time because it's so impressive. And he was doing all those roles as well as playing. So you know what? Another great musician named Stevie Wonder.
Oh my God.
Enjoyed hanging out with you and working with you.
Man, you know what? It's like, I look back on this and it seems like a dream sometimes because I loved Stevie. I was a kid in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we went and saw a movie called Muscle Beach Party. And here comes little Stevie Wonder doing fingertips. And I was like, man, this is the greatest thing of all time. I loved him. I was a fan from that moment on. I don't know what that was, 65, And I followed his career. And then when he broke loose from the various assembly line.
Similar to Michael.
Similar to Michael, yeah. Michael broke loose.
He had a voice that was ready to... Now, he was writing some of his songs, but still...
Well, he wanted to go from being a singer to becoming an artist. Yeah. And at Motown, Marvin Gaye paved the way for Stevie.
What's going on?
Yeah.
That's where that was the breakthrough.
Barry, I mean, I admire and love and respect Barry Gordy, and I treasure the time that I spent talking with him.
And you were close with Barry Gordy, too.
Well, no, I wouldn't say I was close.
You worked through some skillful things.
We worked together on a project that we were both disappointed in. But I just, the fact that he was able to create Motown and everything that Motown was and all those artists in that time, in that period in Detroit as a black man in the time of Jim Crow, that he found all that and put together Hitsville and he's in Detroit and he does an assembly line.
And it was music for all people, too. That was everyone loved it.
We heard it in Cheyenne, Wyoming. All we heard was top 40. It had to cross over. We didn't hear Muddy Waters.
Pure music does. Yeah. It doesn't know those kind of divisions, literal divisions. So, okay, Stevie. How did you segue from Cheyenne, Wyoming? Hearing Stevie, then you get to sit next to him playing piano with him one day. I mean, how does this all happen?
This all happens because I pushed the limits of the music industry of Cheyenne, Wyoming as far as they would go. And the owner of the bowling alley did not agree with me that live music would help his business. So I had a choice of New York or L.A., and I had already done freezing my ass off in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They're doing that right now. They got a blizzard. So I chose L.A., and I came to L.A. not knowing a soul. And I had a plan, and the plan was I'm going to get a job at a music store. I'm going to find the biggest music store where everybody goes, and I'm going to meet musicians, and I'm going to make connections. And I got a job at Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, and that was when they were across the street from where they are now. Do you remember the old Guitar Center on Sunset?
Yeah. Those were that Denny's, the Denny's that everybody used to hang out at after the gig. It was 24 hours on Sunset.
Yeah. And there was what was the name of that Mexican restaurant next door?
Don
Pepe's or
oh, man. I can't remember. I did one of my first jobs at that Mexican restaurant playing a string ensemble.
They hated our guts. they hated everybody that worked at Guitar Center. But they
you remember the restaurant?
Us. Yeah, no. Well, they had good food, too.
So how...
So anyway, Guitar Center. So my plan was that I would meet people.
Who did you meet?
Well, a lot. Like I told you, Oscar Peterson came in one day, and he was great. Daryl Dragon from Captain and Tennille came through. Everybody came through there. It was a good plan.
Right.
Met a lot of people. Ringo came in and hung out, just sat on the counter at the drum counter, spent the whole afternoon. Jaco Pastorius came in one day. Everybody came in. Ace Frehley from Kiss.
Mm-hmm. I love them.
He was shouting. He was just, you remember how Guitar Center was? Everybody would grab a guitar and it was
Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, everybody. And so Ace Frehley is in there. And he said, hey, kid, no, let me show you. You're doing it wrong. I'll show you how to do that. And the kid was like, well, who are you to tell me anything? He said, I'm Ace Frehley.
Because he didn't recognize him because they wore costumes.
He wasn't wearing the kabuki makeup. So the reason I hear about this, I hear someone shouting. The keyboard department was next door. I hear someone shouting, no, I'm Ace Frehley. The kid didn't believe him. So, yeah, everybody. But mainly it was Ronnie Foster, who I mentioned before. And Ronnie is the greatest guy in the world and super talented. And he had just moved to LA from New York. He was from Buffalo, New York, and he'd been living in Manhattan. And he decided that LA would be a better place for him.
Okay.
And he lived up on Hollywood Boulevard, real close to Guitar Center. Had an apartment there. And he just came in and we talked and we just hit it off. We became friends. And he used to come hang out all the time. And I used to go over to Ronnie's house and just knock on the door and I'd call, and it was cool. We hung out. But what was going on at Guitar Center at that time, there was another guy there that was the manager of the keyboard department. His name was Jackson Howe. Good guy, really knew synthesizers. And working there was also a good opportunity to expand my knowledge of synthesizers beyond what, I had started out with a Mini Moog that I bought in 1972. But this was like now all of a sudden I'm in a place where we got one of these, we got one of those. We didn't have one of those, but,
okay.
We've got all this stuff. And Jackson Howe was saying, have you seen this ARP Sequencer? And I said, yeah, but I never really fooled with it much. And he showed me everything that thing could do. You remember those, the 1604?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's back of my hand, that thing.
And I was going, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And we wound up hooking 4 of those together because they were patchable, in and out and everything. Had one of them that would just transpose the sequence down every...
Okay, yeah.
You could subdivide it. So we had 4 of those together, controlling everything that could be controlled. We had 16 synthesizers hooked together. And I had a Sony reel-to-reel at home, and I brought that down and I recorded it and had this pretty elaborate sequence set up. And I played a lead over it live and recorded that. And then I could make cassettes from that. And I still have that recording. In fact, it's on my channel, on my YouTube channel. I found the tape years later. Anyway, Ronnie wanted a cassette of that because he dug it because it was, and basically it was all the synthesizers that we're doing like what people do with Eurorack stuff today. It's like, they even sell modules. It's just one module does a hi-hat and another one does a snare and another one the kick. That's what we had an ARP 2600 for the kick drum. We'd have another synth for the snare. And just on and on, the manager was just having fits. Why did you open 4, now I've got floor models of all this stuff, right?
Right.
And it's like, we didn't want to sell any of it because that would mess up the display. But I had this tape, and Ronnie asked for a cassette. And the next thing I know, Bill, there's a call for you at line 2, and I pick it up. Bill, this is Stevie Wonder. I said, Ronnie, come on, knock it off. Because he was that kind of guy. And I knew he was friends with Stevie. He played, I don't know when they met, but he played on Songs in the Key of Life. He played on Golden Lady, which was on an album previous to that. But they were friends for a long time. They still are. And so when he convinced me that it really was Stevie Wonder, he said he wanted to do that sound. So here's another thing: is I've made a sound that another artist wants to incorporate into their music.
Right.
And he was working on Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants is the full title, I think. Journey Through, yeah. Anyway, I just call it Secret Life of Plants. He was about midway through that, and this was his follow-up to Songs in the Key of Life, which was way overdue because he was notorious for taking a long time. He took his time with things. So we set that setup up. I borrowed a great deal of a few of those sequencers from Guitar Center with their permission. I didn't borrow it, surreptitiously. And we set it all up in a studio in Irvine where he was recording. And that's on a track called Race Babbling. And all the drums are electronic and being driven by those ARP sequencers.
So we could hear that on the album.
Yeah, you can hear that on The Secret Life of Plants. It's a double album. I can't remember if it's on side 3 or side 4, whatever. I don't know. It's Race Babbling is the song.
So that's how so it was through Ronnie Foster, and he introduced you to Stevie, and then you were programming on Before You Know It, and then
Yep.
Were you performing with him too?
No. I auditioned for him. It was right around that time that Greg left.
Greg Fillinganes.
Yeah, Greg Fillinganes, who is again, I will say, is a great keyboard player. And he was so young and just so talented, but Stevie found him. They were both from Detroit.
Yeah.
And Greg went off to do his own thing. And I auditioned, but I was too green. And I got so nervous, even though by the time I auditioned for Stevie's band, I'd known him and I was comfortable with him. But then this was like, oh my God.
Did you do any touring?
Yes.
So you did do touring with Stevie.
I did do touring mostly to take care of, to make sure the synthesizers would behave. So I toured as a synth tech, and mostly by that time Steve had the Fairlight, which I spent hours and hours learning the Fairlight. I talked to the guys who developed it and was asking them questions about...
Camaraderie?
I can't remember the names, the Australian guys.
Yeah. I went down there to Fairlight and spent some time.
I spent tons of time learning the Fairlight. And I used to ask him, I said, it's got all these capabilities. How do I, with the drawing waveforms and the light pen and all that? And I said, it's amazing. How do I make a trumpet sound? And they were like, I don't know.
Well, they knew.
So it was just like an early sampler,
Yeah.
But it was my gig on the tour. Steve did a brief tour of Secret Life of Plants, and he had actually had an orchestra with him,
and some unusual synths, right?
Yeah. Well, with the CS80 and to take a Fairlight on tour at that time was pretty bold. I was trying to find electricity for all the keyboards, and I started to pick stuff up and move it, and the guy just said, "Don't touch that. You're not in the union, You got to wait for the union guy to come plug you in." So, okay. But it was fun. We had a good time.
And you're still friends with, and this is just like Michael, you became friends with him.
Yeah. So I haven't seen him for a long time, but he's Stevie Wonder, I mean, he's got 8 kids, and he looks after all of them, and he's a family man now, But he's one of the greatest guys in the world. I threw a birthday party for my wife and invited him, and he came. Not only did he come, he said, "Where's the music room?" And we slipped off to where I had my little music studio set up, and he programmed a beat into. I had an LM1 drum machine, and I had an emulator and a Rhodes, and he just like in 2 minutes wrote a song, a happy birthday song for my wife. Only it was yes, I kid you not. I've got it somewhere on a cassette, and we had the tracks down of the drums and the bass and the piano, and then we called the rest of the party in, and he sang it live, and I pressed the record button,
So when did you have a chance to play with Stevie? I know you played some keyboards
Informally. We were always jamming in the studio.
Always jamming?
Jamming, and sometimes, like Steve would come down there and be in meetings. He had his office in his studio, and he'd come and he'd go straight in that office, and he'd talk business with his lawyer and whatnot. And then the rest of us would just be hanging out. So I would just practice he had a beautiful 9-foot Yamaha Grand there. And one time he came through and he heard me just playing scales, I think, and he said, I wish I could play like that. It was the biggest compliment I got from him. But his fingering, he didn't, no one had ever showed it. He didn't he doesn't use his thumbs when he plays. And I tried to show him the, proper fingering.
Right.
But it was like taking a trumpet player and trying to change their embouchure.
You were showing Stevie how to finger a major scale?
Yeah.
It's all about getting the thumb under. And he doesn't even use his thumbs.
He doesn't use his thumbs. So it's like, but he doesn't need to. He can do whatever he wants. He's Stevie Wonder. But we'd always be jamming informally. But the one time I really got to play with him and the whole band was, it was his birthday, and they rented out a soundstage at SIR. The whole setup was there, the Rhodes, the CS-80, the clavinet, and a Steinway. And I sat down and just played, and it was just a blast. And I got to play Signed, Sealed, Delivered. And I'm playing the piano part, and
And Stevie was playing what?
He was playing Rhodes, clavinet, I think. Yeah.
And you played the piano.
And I played piano. Yeah.
So my synthesizer teacher, I actually had a synthesizer teacher, Clark Spangler, he learned from Paul Beaver, who basically wrote the book on that Moog.
Beaver and Krause.
Beaver and Krause. And the None Such Guide to Electronic Music was like the first thing, was just like, yeah. I mean, everybody had one back then. This is what a sawtooth sounds like. That was the record was like waveforms, and it was like unbelievable to me, and I studied the record. And Clark Spangler was my teacher, and he did Stevie Wonder gigs, and he programmed the GX1 on Secret Life of Plants. But Clark would tell me, like, I remember him working on the album. When he was working on it, I'd come in on a Saturday, and he'd go, I was so tired. I got there at 10 o'clock for a Stevie Wonder session, and then Stevie doesn't show up until like 4 in the morning or whatever.
Exactly.
And everybody's sitting there getting paid, waiting for Stevie, falling asleep, kind of, because it's getting really late. Did you ever have those experiences?
I had those.
The late hang with Stevie?
I had those experiences early on. Maybe the second session we did. He called me up and said, "Can you come to the studio tonight?" And I said, "I'm having car trouble." I had this MG Midget that would, a fun car, but it always had something, And he said, "All right, we'll come pick you up." So
he picked you up.
He picked me up. Stephanie Andrews, who's still working with him, a great person, been his personal assistant for all these years. She drove, and here comes, finally, this was like 10 o'clock at night. He said, "Can you come to the studio?" Finally shows up at my apartment on Gardner Street in West Hollywood. Stevie was living in a hotel in Hollywood. I forget the name of it.
What kind of car was it?
It was a Rolls Royce.
He picked you up in his Rolls Royce to take you to his gig.
Rolls Royce, take me to his gig. He was 4 hours late, but I didn't complain because this is really cool.
Okay.
So we go, and it was fun. I mean, I even remember the drive down there. I was sitting in the back seat, and he was like fiddling with the radio, and he kept landing on the music station, like elevator music. I thought, why the hell is he listening to this? But he was learning stuff from that. He was listening to the arrangements.
Some good string arrangements on there.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. At the time, I was still like a snob. It's like,
but good musicians were doing that on the side,
Yeah. He just, it's just, he just listened to everything. And that's why.
And then he drove you home after the job?
Well, not exactly. We worked all night, and the session ended at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then Stephanie said, "I'm sleepy. Can you drive?" And I said, "Oh, okay." I grabbed a cup of coffee.
So you drove the Rolls Royce home?
I drive the Rolls Royce. Stevie and Stephanie crawl in the back seat and go to sleep. And I'm driving Stevie's Rolls, and I start to nod off. And I'm going like, oh my God, wait, I cannot, I can't be the person that wrecks Stevie Wonder's Rolls Royce with him sleeping in the back. No. So just the thought of that was enough to wake me up. But we got back up to Hollywood, about a 40-minute drive in those days. Now it'd probably take you 3 hours. But
okay.
we got back, they're asleep. I drove around my block a couple of times to see if any of my friends would see me. I drove around Guitar Center. It was too early. They weren't even open. Nobody. So I wanted people to see me driving this Rolls.
Who's in the back of my Rolls?
Stevie, look, I'm giving Stevie Wonder right. But no.
Well, that's really something. Well, I mean, he was a friend of yours. He picked you up.
We were friends. We wound up, I was telling you about that MG Midget. I took him to the NAMM show in that thing. Can you imagine that, Stevie Wonder in an MG Midget, and I'm driving?
Just the two of you?
Yeah. I dined out on that for years. Every manufacturer at the NAMM show, that's the guy that brought Stevie,
Wow.
It was gold. But he's just so much fun. Beyond just being crazy talented. Everybody knows,
He likes to have fun?
Yeah, he's funny. He could do stand-up. He'd have us on. He was doing a routine one night about imagining himself being 40 years old. And this was, you got to remember, this is 1979, maybe 1980. And he's imagining himself being 40 years old and washed up and a lounge singer. And he went through this thing of imitating a cheesy kind of Holiday Inn lounge singer. And, now, let me do this little my Sharia more. And we're on the floor laughing. And he just kept going and going. He's just the funniest guy. People don't know that. And the other thing they don't know, Ronnie pointed this out to me, and he was right. Ronnie Foster. He pointed out to me that people don't really know just how good of a singer Stevie is. Ronnie compared his voice to John Coltrane. He said Stevie's voice is like the John Coltrane of human voices, and he's right because
the nuance of pitch, right? The inside,
just everything that he can do is like he's just, and the way he can surprise you, and I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he can sing something that he's sung 1,000 times and make it sound like it's the first time he's ever sung it, and he'll invert a phrase, he'll do something different, he'll find a different note, he'll express it, and it just comes out of him naturally. It's like, do you remember when he did Bridge Over Troubled Water for the Hope for Haiti?
I don't.
Look it up sometime, because you never heard Bridge Over Troubled Water.
Yeah, probably I have, but I will.
Just like, yeah, here it is,
Well, that's, people that are great can do that, like revisit something as if it's for the first time. I remember hearing interviews with B.B. King talking about playing The Thrill Is Gone because everyone wanted to hear him play it. Yeah. And he said he just didn't have any problem looking at that song like it was going to be the first time he played it, every time he played it. Because they're so limitless.
Yeah.
So, it's always a first time because it's always a different experience. Like that moment in time has never existed before and it never will after. But they exist in that kind of time space, I think.
Yeah. He used to do his song, You and I, just himself and piano. He did that for a long time, but on that tour, it was just so beautiful. Every night I would tear up, just the beauty, which is just a gorgeous song. It's gorgeous on the record, but just him accompanying himself on the piano. Because it's amazing.
A lesser musician is going to have to just play it just to be able to get through it and get all the notes right and be thinking about that. But they're past that. It's like they're performing the song. Like I read a Chick Corea interview where he was talking about the first phase is just like learning the song and you can play the music. And the second phase is like memorizing the song. But then the third phase of the song is when it's in you and you don't really have to think.
That's it, yeah.
And then you can do things with it and you can experience it like kind of like for the first time every time and do something different. So, that's you pick that up and you're around people like you had an opportunity to be around him and Michael Jackson, and I'm sure it rubbed off when you did your solo work and other things you did later. It's like this going to school. Like
I met Chick Corea when I was going to Berkeley, and he had a gig at the Jazz Workshop, and he was doing Return to Forever, and he had
Al Di Meola,
Stanley Clarke, and he still had
because he was from Berkeley.
No, he had Bill Connors, and Al Di Meola was at Berkeley
what I'm
at the
saying.
same time I was.
Yeah, he must have found him there.
But this gig was still, Bill Connors was still the guitarist.
that was the
Lenny White on drums.
Flora Purim band, right?
No. It was the first
album.
quartet of Return to Forever. It was Chick,
Lenny White.
Stanley Clarke, and Bill Connors on guitar.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah. And Al Di Meola replaced Bill Connors.
Right, that was on A Romantic Warrior.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
Al Di Meola's first album. And Chick played the YC-45
Yeah.
organ, the two-manual Yamaha organ.
He was always down for everything, man. I was watching a video of him playing with Miles Davis at the Isle of Wight Festival, and he's playing this like a Hohner pianette.
You just pick it up and go.
Yeah, he's an awesome musician, but he's a nice cat. I got to Jazz Workshop early, and we had a long conversation. I'd say, well, how come you don't have a synthesizer? He said, I can't afford it, you know. And I thought, you should come. I had my Mini Moog in the dorm. Come over to the dorm. I'll show you my Mini Moog. Because I'm not going to go to the Berkeley dorm. They'll mob me, you know. But he was nice. And the last time I saw him was when Stevie did his Songs in the Key of Life in its entirety. I think it was 2016 for his House Full of Toys concert. And Chick Corea played on the concert, as well as Herbie and a whole bunch of other guest stars. It was an amazing concert. And at the after party afterwards, I told Chick, it was so cool to see Chick Corea playing Stevie's song Contusion from Songs in the Key of Life. I said, that it's like full circle, because I'm sure that Steve wrote that song influenced by Return to Forever, what you were doing. And Chick said, yeah.
Wow.
And he was just delighted to play with him. They were friends, you know. Stevie was a fan of his, and it was mutual.